Bring in Charlie Sykes, an MSNBC contributor and columnist. Joining me here in studio, Adrienne Elrod, former senior advisor and senior spokesperson for the Harris-Walz campaign, who worked for Rahm Emanuel at the DNC. Okay, so Adrienne, Emanuel was on The View a couple weeks ago. He was kind of teasing a presidential run. Let's play that.
I think one of the problems for Democrats, we allow Donald Trump to get too much in our head. We got to make sure, do we have an answer to the question, what is troubling and challenging the American people? And we have to start focusing on those answers, not just being against Trump, but for America. And they got to have somebody with the muscle and the fight ready to make that.
You sound like a presidential candidate.
No, I am in training. I don't know if I'll make the Olympics, though.
He's been in training for a while,
Indeed,
as we well know.
indeed.
And you know him, as I said, from the DNC. Pros and cons. He's going to be in a crowded field if he enters the presidential race.
Yeah, look, I think, Chris, there are a lot of pros to this. First of all, you've got to look at Rahm's track record. As an aide to President Clinton, he tackled some of the toughest challenges of that time and got them through. Passing the assault weapons ban, enacting children's health insurance. Same with President Obama as his chief of staff. Passed the Affordable Care Act, dealt with the financial crisis in a very effective way.
Okay, it's a whole different world.
No, I understand that, but the point is, I think it's important when Democrats are looking, and not just Democrats, but people in America are looking for their next leader. They want to know they want to have somebody who has a proven track record. Rahm, of course, a lot of success as mayor of Chicago as well, but also somebody who has a forward-looking vision. That is incredibly important. And I think the points that Rahm has been making are points that a lot of Democrats have been wanting to hear, which is we are too woke in our party. We need to get back to that sort of moderate Democratic leadership committee centrist viewpoints. If we're actually going to pull in more people into our party, pull in more people into our coalition, we've got to get back to talking about the issues that really affect American families. And he's exactly right. I mean, I think sometimes, and I'm seeing this happen a lot in the House and Senate right now, too, where Democrats tend to sort of chase the trumpet tail. Whatever Trump's saying and doing, they chase that as opposed to really looking at a forward-looking vision. And I think Rahm is somebody that a lot of us look at as someone who we'd like to see more back in action, whether that means as a presidential candidate, whether it means he's running for, another public office. We want to see him out there more because we need that tough talking leadership.
So, Charlie, Emanuel does seem to be trying to push the Democratic Party to the center when you say things like toxic, weak, and woke. So in the age of Trump, might the country, as Adrienne suggests, be looking for a candidate who is more centrist, but also has a reputation of being blunt, outspoken, and aggressive? I mean, his nickname is Rambo, after all.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say that he is very, very much a dark horse when we're talking about the presidential race. But he's entering a debate that Democrats are going to be having now for the next several years. What is their direction? What is their message? Why have they been losing these elections? Why is their brand so underwater? And the fact that he's willing to say things like, weak and woke, those are fighting words. That is a provocative entry into the debate. So clearly, he is saying we need somebody who is simply not going to engage in, fan service for people on Blue Sky or viewers of MSNBC. We have to go to those voters who used to vote for Democrats who aren't anymore. And so I think that it's important to mix this up. It's important to hear from voices like this, whether or not he runs for president or he ends up running for governor of Illinois. That's a secondary question. But it's intriguing, and it's intriguing that he is so blunt at this point in the cycle.
Adrienne, it's occurring to me as I'm listening to Charlie that after last fall's electoral loss, a lot of Democrats wanted to see the party ditch the consultants. I say this to somebody who's a consultant. But one of the things, there's a through line, I think, in a lot of successful presidents. Bill Clinton had great political instincts. When you talk to Bill Clinton, there was nobody else in the world, right?
Exactly.
Barack Obama had a gut that he trusted and that he followed. Donald Trump trusts himself in front of an audience and knows how to deliver what his folks, his supporters, his base want to hear. Is that what maybe has been missing? I wonder how. Would anybody want to work for somebody who believes that he can run the campaign better than they can? But is that something that the Democrats have to look for? Whether it's Rahm or somebody else, they need somebody who can read the room a little better than we've seen.
Absolutely, Chris. And I think what you just laid out with Clinton, Obama, even Trump to an extent, And
Not
certainly
to an
some-
extent. This is a guy who can really.
People want authenticity. They don't want the talking points. They actually want someone who is going out there and speaking from their gut. And sometimes that is, when you hear Donald Trump talk a lot, I don't agree with his rhetoric, but I do think that he is connected with the voters because he speaks to them in a very authentic way, especially to his base. And there is something to be said about doing that, not going off canned talking points and really going out there and having these direct conversations with the American people. I mean, one of the challenges, again, that we have as Democrats, and a lot of this has to do, Chris, with the fact that we don't have a quote unquote referee really out there right now who is, definitely the leader of the party. And we haven't been in this situation in a while. We don't have somebody who's really traffic copying, what the future is going to look like and what we should be doing on the outside, which creates an opportunity for people who are interested in running for president, who are starting to kind of put their feelers out there. But at the same time, it's a challenge in the sense that we don't know who that party leader is going to be. It's kind of where we were when Dukakis lost in '88, before Clinton became, the heir apparent and then led the party for 8 years, and then even more so afterwards because Gore lost and then John Kerry lost. So he really did sort of run the party up until Barack Obama became the president. We don't have somebody like that on the outside right now. And that's one of the challenges, but it certainly creates a lot of opportunities for people like Rahm, other people who may be exploring a run for president.
Well, I would be very interested in watching a debate between Rahm Emanuel, Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom,
Me too.
Tim Walz.
Sign me up.
Charlie Sykes, Adrian Elrod, thank you both.